See what's happening at the New York State Fair. WCNY Productions presents WCNY at the Fair with your hosts, Ted and Amy.
I never realized how bald I am until they have that overhead shot.
Camera.
What is that?
And we don't even, they played us on Jumbotron last year. Let me
Yikes.
tell you something, that's not pretty. Hey, welcome to the second day of the great New York State Fair.
We're Ted and Amy live at the WCNY Media Center. Well, actually live on tape. And if you noticed, the sun was out yesterday. I got a lot of color sitting here.
I'm just hoping you got to get some sunscreen. This is only day 2 and you're already getting a sunburn.
I know.
And I want to apologize. I was mentioning yesterday I don't normally let Ted eat before we do this taping.
We did a demo kitchen. If you're watching,
had an apron on though.
If you're watching in HD, I'm telling you, right? You're going to be able to pick out. There's some tabbouleh.
He gets around
some
food
stir-fried
and there's
zucchini.
no going back. But
it was a tough day. It's Law Enforcement Day today here at the fair. We've got a lot going on. Last night in the Center of Progress building, Americraft presented a check to a young lady for $2,500 for her essay on buying American.
Well, you know, the Center of Progress building the last couple of years has been focused on buying American. And so this was, they asked for an essay contest. This is Olivia Taylor, again, $2,500 because of her winning essay. So that's very exciting. And boy, speaking of the Jumbotron, she's reading it right there. So that's really cool. So thank you to Americraft for that. Also, we heard how the butter sculpture was created yesterday.
That's right. Yeah, they unveiled it here day 1 of the New York State Fair yesterday. It's called Cow Power.
Cow Power.
The theme is that apparently there's a new process where they can convert cow manure to fuel. So they have an animated cow driving a car.
And as we mentioned, you missed the...
I missed the attractive mom they used to feature in the butter sculpture a couple of years ago.
But there was an order of protection, which scares me, against Ted with the butter sculpture woman.
This butter sculpture
I don't know how that
works.
works. This is animatronic, though. It moves and everything, so that's kind of groovy.
Very exciting, very exciting. Big attendance yesterday, up over last year by about, what'd they say?
Over 9,000 from last year. Well, Kelly Clarkson was at the Mohegan Sun Grandstand. It was a beautiful night, drew a lot of people.
We'd like to show you footage, but unfortunately, fortunately, I guess, MTV was here last night videotaping part of the Kelly Clarkson concert for an upcoming special, so they weren't allowing any other cameras in.
Boy, there was a big crowd there. Chuck Wicks was earlier in the day, and Sarah Evans, both Dancing with the Stars contestants. Sarah Evans performed last night to, boy, a big crowd at Chevy Court. They're really doing all they can to provide a lot of free entertainment, more than ever this year.
Yeah, they've got to cut, they used to have the same show twice a day at Chevy Court. Now they've got some different acts. They're, some youth ones as well as some of our favorites, and it's a good time. Coming up, let's see, today, again, we mentioned it, it's Law Enforcement Day. At the grandstand tonight, the Mohegan Sun Grandstand, Kenny Chesney, big
that's
country
going to be
star,
a big draw,
along with Jake Owen.
And Jake Owen is opening for him, and at Chevy Court, Grand Funk Railroad.
Wow.
How about that?
They're an American band.
Is that bringing you back?
They're coming
I'm seeing Ted Long with a lot more hair, some red glasses, and some painter pants.
Back in the day, that was the look, and I had it nailed.
Now, maybe you recognize this gentleman from RJ O'Toole's back in the 1980s.
Yeah, at the parking lot, playing his saxophone.
That must have been it. Senator John DeFrancisco is joining us. How you doing?
How are you, Senator?
Very well. Thanks for having me.
You remember the parties outside RJ O'Toole's, don't you, you crazy guy?
That was much before my time.
Sure. How are things in the 50th District?
Well, it's challenging. It's challenging this year, obviously, with the budget problems, but we're going to try to hold the line.
All right, now, were you the one that couldn't find the key to the cabinet to get all the bills out when you guys were having a big spat?
No, I was ready to just take an axe to the key, to the drawer. It was kind of the most bizarre thing in the world.
It was bizarre reading about it and hearing about it, I got to tell you.
That a Secretary of the Senate who works for the Senate at the direction of one party was precluding the rest of the senators to get at the bill jackets. It was beyond belief.
All right.
Then someone was looking for the vending machine, and all of a sudden there was a quorum.
There was a
and
vote.
Things started
I don't know.
voted on.
It was crazy.
It was amazing. If you look at the history of the state of New York for the last 15 months, from the time Spitzer took his downfall to the fiasco in the Senate, you couldn't make it up.
Yeah.
You just couldn't.
Now, let's say Pedro Espada was walking down the Midway right now and asked you for directions to the bathroom. Would you give them to him?
Of course I would. We want to keep the fair clean.
Now, is everyone getting along? Is it a little? Are the tensions eased up a little, Senator?
I'm hoping everybody's getting along now. It was making me uncomfortable. comfortable.
Well, it's fine. What's the problem is the policy of the increased spending and the increased taxes, and we've been trying to fight it, but we are in the minority now, and we need a couple of the people on the other side to go with us.
Now, I know the governor passed or signed some legislation yesterday, but also vetoed a lot of it. How are you feeling about his decisions that were made?
Well, I think they were good decisions. Most of the vetoes that he dealt were ones dealing with bills that would have increased spending. That's the worst thing we can do right now. There was one, for example, a perfect example. I voted no when it came to the floor, and it was to create a separate division of the Department of Mental Health for minority mental health issues, which would include another bureaucracy. Now, number one, can't afford it. We should be consolidating services in departments. And on the second thing, I don't know what minority health is, mental health, how that's different than majority mental health. It just seemed like a ridiculous bill and a costly bill. So I think those vetoes that he did to save money are important.
Yeah. All right, well, you've been walking around the fairgrounds today for Law Enforcement Day. You were here earlier for a ceremony. How's the reaction been from the crowd when they see you, Senator?
Well, I have a great reaction from the crowd. I've got a lot of friends out there, and we talk cordially. Every so often, someone's going to ask me a difficult question. I give the answer like I always do.
Right.
Honestly, and if they agree with me, they agree with me. If they don't, they don't.
I think it took a lot of courage for you to have that town hall meeting
We were both saying that.
Your situation with what was going on with the state senate just recently, a few weeks. What was that? A month ago?
A month or so ago, right?
You know what's interesting about that? If you just read the newspaper, you'd think there was a near riot.
Yeah.
I was going to be strung
wasn't
up.
That way.
It was the most cordial meeting
Yeah.
I've ever had, and everybody's questions were answered. Follow-up questions were answered, and. I think people understood whether they agreed or not. At least they had the opportunity to ask those questions.
It was great that you came out and expressed your point of view and gave people a chance to question it.
And I think of you every time I put my accelerator down to 65 miles per hour, babe. Every single time.
Well, that was one of my highlights in the Senate by increasing the speed on the throughway.
Oh, there you go.
That's great. But, Senator, it's always nice to see you. Keep in touch, all right?
Thank you both very much.
Sure. Right. Senator John DeFrancisco. And, again, he's here as part of Law Enforcement Day celebrations and, of course, representing the 50th District here at the Great New York State Fair.
Well, coming up, we're going to find out what's out and about, what's new and exciting with State Fair Director Dan O'Hara.
Yeah.
Plus, we mentioned Law Enforcement Day. Our little friend Paulie had to behave himself because he went out with law enforcement yesterday. So we'll hear all about that. Coming up next on WCNY at the Fair with Ted and Amy.